Isn't that good cinnamon? Yeah, it is.
All right, we have a 6:31.
It was not yours to start with, but, because I know you were asking for this.
You wanna take me up? We'll go over the, regular business and public hearing meeting first. We'll have invocation, you all received a copy of the announcement for the festival flag. And the ceremonial matters, we'll have a proclamation for Red Ribbon Week, and one of our local meetings is supposed to be here to accept that. And then we have several of our local teachers of the year that will be here tonight to accept the proclamation, congratulating them on that. We have the minutes from September 14th that were postponed last time, and the minutes from today. It's my understanding the 14th have been corrected, they just haven't been sent out, but do you have a copy of those, Ms. Richardson, or have you typed them, have you printed it? Let Mr. Mayor look at that before the meeting. What about the 28th, are we good on the 28th?
We got the 28th, and I don't know what the situation is with August 24th. Because the summary minutes are still up for the 24th and the 10th of August, so I just don't know where that is.
I think
Because you had corrections on the 24th, so I don't put them up until after I've done corrections that you require.
Okay, well,
Did we vote on it already?
I don't think we did, but I sent corrections for all 3 meetings today.
so. Have the 24th, have we approved the 24th meeting minutes?
That's what I'm asking.
I
Have
don't
we
believe
approved
so.
them? Okay, so once we approve them, then she puts them on. Is that the?
And what about the 10th been approved? Is
Those
somebody
have been,
still?
those have been fixed on the website. So we need to put the 24th on the agenda to approve.
I think we ought to.
They've been approved.
They can approve, but we can put them on there again to approve with the changes.
Well, we're gonna approve the corrections, and we don't need to put it on there. I just need to sign on them. and she'll put them on. We have no invited guests tonight. Mr. Williams should be here for planning commission, you know.
I haven't heard otherwise. I called to follow up. I've heard about it this week and last time.
Mr. Vice. That's all.
Yeah, I didn't know I was on the agenda. I've got really nothing to say.
Okay.
I could make it up.
Mr. Vice, well, I have your attention, well, I'll talk to you about it when we get to the agenda item.
Talk about the ghost story.
City manager's report.
Just a few slides from the Great Northwest.
Public hearing, we have a first reading on the express oil change and service center. Anything you need to know about that?
Basically, it's just them bringing their property into compliance to have the CUP and then add an additional bay behind the existing building where the giant landscaping is. Pretty simple.
And they're gonna put in, access out to that.
They're gonna add a curb cut on the rear to facilitate some drive through out of those right bays to the far right to exit southbound.
That'll be a big.
I think so. There was some concern about Van Adams about parking, but we put them in touch with the consultant in charge of the express oil, and they're supposed to be working on that.
Any other questions? And so we'll be waiving the first reading and placing it on our, then we have new business. We have, I'm nominating again Jimmy McKinley to the Arts Commission. It's my understanding the Arts Commission has vetted him and is recommending him. It's my understanding that Mr. McKinley resides outside the city, but and Ms. Washington has moved outside the city, but I was told that Mr. Banks and Ms. Washington moved in the city, but I never received those changes of addresses for them. Do you know, do we have anything to verify that?
I don't know. I don't have anything with me.
So I had asked them to fill out the front page of their application with their new address, just so we'll have something to show they actually do live in the city. I don't know if we want to wait till we get those to make the nomination, or if we want to go forward tonight, just on representation that they have moved in the city.
I think we could go forward.
Yeah, I know at least one of them lives in the city, I've seen their house. And well, all we need is one.
Well, Miss Boykins moved outside of the city, and so her and Miss Washington, my understanding, flip-flop. They moved, so. It's whether Mr. Banks moved into the city or not.
I don't think it's an issue. I don't think they would have told us that you would the city, they hadn't.
Then it's my understanding, the contract for ER Snell still needs to be reviewed, but we can go ahead and just, make a motion to authorize the mayor to execute once it is reviewed.
We could do that, $844,927.70 for about 14 streets.
Somebody have any questions about the paving contract?
Is that it says patching and milling, is that repaving or is that just patching and milling?
It's resurfacing.
Research.
Anything we need to know? We're good?
It's the, said the approved budget.
Oh,
And
that's
it's
fine, I
our,
was just curious.
it's our 14 streets that we can do with that amount.
Okay.
Consideration action on approval of the lease of the stage for the city of Grayson. Any questions?
On October 24th.
How much we charging?
What's that?
How much we charging?
$100. Maintenance fee.
And are they getting it for a whole week? It looked like it was for.
We drop it
Saturday.
off on Thursday, and pick it up Monday.
Got it, okay.
I think they have, they've found a volunteer to open and close.
Yeah, I wonder who that is. Yeah.
A trained volunteer.
Yeah.
Correspondence, we don't have any correspondence to review, city attorney report, do you have anything for us tonight? We have discussion items on our work session agenda. I have put on here, discussion of upcoming election logistics. I know there have been some questions about oaths and certificates and things like that. I don't know, I think we've gotten everything straightened out. I don't know if there's anything we need to discuss.
And it's a great
The poll
setup.
managers and everybody got sworn in today, and early voting started today.
The poll manager did not, come today. Ms. Schultz indicated that she was on doctor's leave to take it easy. So I'm not sure when she'll be able to come in and get that ball. I'm not sure at the moment.
And so the assistant poll managers got sworn in today, then in her place?
We had, an assistant poll manager and a temporary poll manager get sworn in.
And in general, how did everything go today?
Been good. We had approximately 54 individuals to come in and vote.
Wow, that's a big first day.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Columbus Day, some people are
And so we have two assistant poll managers, but only one assistant got sworn in today.
No, both got sworn in. We have one assistant poll manager. Another assistant poll manager is out of town. And so then we had a temporary assistant poll manager get sworn in.
And the elections committee took the oath, was that last week or 2 weeks ago?
Correct.
Anything from y'all side of your anybody else, any questions? I would ask, I think that I came across an email with this subject before from Ms. Arnold. The ballot box is kept in the vault, after each night.
Correct.
And, I think Ms. Arnold's practice was, several people, I believe, have keys to the vault, and during election time, I think they restricted the access to the vault. So I just asked that we check on that. It's my understanding several staff members actually have access to the vault. They don't necessarily need to be in there during election time, just to keep the appearance of it being a little empty.
And there was, I think, right, when you and Chris did some research on what Phyllis could and could not grant open records wise.
I saw Chris send an email, but I did not see what his research is, but
Okay.
I can look back at it.
Okay.
Are you talking about the advanced voting question or the
Yeah,
absentee question?
the list of workers, if you will. I think you got that open records request. I just wanted to see where that stood.
I'll go
Make sure that's
back
good.
and look at the email that I vaguely remember, and then we
Okay.
can talk about it afterwards.
All right.
And I think there was one about addresses where he told me, last week that it was his understanding that addresses had to be redacted.
It wasn't workers.
Hmm.
It wasn't workers. It was a list of individuals who had requested absentee ballots by mail.
Okay, okay.
And I think he told you that you could release the names but not the
Yes, he-
addresses, is that right?
He sent the email today, and so I didn't get a chance to, read his email until after, advanced voting was over at 5 o'clock, and then I'm down here, so as soon as I finish here, I'll make sure it gets done first thing in the morning before election.
Anything else? Discussion of DDA bid selection for signage. There is a gentleman, from Florida that is very persistent and concerned about the, signage bid that we released. He emails and calls a couple times a week. And I know, Mr. Sanders, you were looking in that, do you know?
Mr. Hartjee,
Is it, I remember it's Adam, I don't remember his last name, that's what I was trying to look up.
I've
Yes.
spoken with him a couple of times also. And, I think Eric and Buddy could probably kind of go over the process that, the full process that you went through on the, sign RFQ.
Just as a quick summary, on April 2nd, the bid packet for requests went out, making it known that we were soliciting for bids for the signage. They were received I'm going to back up. Let me start again. On April 2nd and April 16th, the DDA reviewed the bid packet that was sent out. The addition between those two was that the town green signage was put in there on April 17th. The RFB, the request for bids, was released and we advertised 3 consecutive Fridays. On May 8th, the bids were due. 5 bids were received. 2 of them were decided not to be followed up on. On May 21st, the DDA selected a group of 3 bidders that they invited in for an hour opportunity to present their packet and for discussion and conversation. That occurred on July 17th, and they reviewed all 3 bids. Those 3 companies that were invited in were Northwestern Sign Design, that is Mr. Harjee's company out of Florida. Creative Sign Designs was a Kelly Crandall out of New Jersey, and IMG, Craig Johnson and his team were a sign design out of Norcross.
Greg, if I can stop you just for a minute, if I can, just so we're paying attention, if I can just let everyone know, this was Mr. Hartree's email, or he said that it was brought to our attention last Thursday, August 27th, that we are not selected as a successful bidder for the above-mentioned project, even though our proposal was nearly $300,000 lower than the firm the DDA chose. We'd like to lay out some bullet points on the facts pertaining to the process. There were 6 bids received ranging from $643,000 to over $1 million. Per Eric Van On, the bidders came in at $643,000, one in the higher $600,000 range, 2 in the $700,000 range, one in the higher $900,000 range, and one well over $1 million. These figures were given to me by Eric during a phone conversation after the post-bid interviews were conducted. The DDA left the responsibility of creating a short list of firms for post-bid interviews to Sky Design, the design firm who created the signage bid package. Sky Design selected the 2 highest bids and our lowest bid for post-bid interviews. Post-bid interviews were conducted on July 16th. Some references were requested, which were supplied. We are informed by Eric that Butch Sanders will be making a final decision, whereas he would present that decision to City Council on August 24th. Those were the chain of events that led up to a phone call last Thursday with Eric. With that being said, we do have a few questions. Why was the decision to create a short list of firms for post-bid interviews left up to an outside representative, Sky Design, that is not an elected official from the city of Snellville? Why did Sky Design disregard the 3 other lower bids received, yet chose to have the 2 highest bids come in for post-bid interviews? Why were we informed by Eric that Butch Sanders would be presenting his decision at the August 24th City Council meeting? Yet on the city news section of the City Snellville website, there is a post from Monday, August 17th, that the DDA chose an image manufacturing group for the signage. Why does it state on that same post that the construction project was for $120,000 when the IMG proposal came in close to $1 million? Is the DDA aware that Sky Design, Todd Vaught, VP Principal, and Image Manufacturing Group, Craig Johnson, COO, 51% owner, have maintained a long-standing business and personal relationship over the years? Is it the policy of the city of Snellville to award contracts to the most competitive and qualified bids since the projects are funded with taxpayer dollars? Is there an official appeal protest procedure? So as you're looking at, that's the background. I'm sorry, Eric, if you want to continue.
Well, I would say that there are several inaccuracies in his email, and if I could have a copy of it, I'd be glad to outline those. I at no time said that Butch would be making the decision or the presentation. That would be Buddy Scott. He is the chair of the DDA. So I will keep moving through the dates. And he is right under one thing, and that is that he has some of the numbers wrong, but they're probably about right. We did choose a low bidder. We did choose one in the middle. But it was the DDA that made that selection. They did ask for a suggestion from the consultant at that point in time, but the DDA interviewed everybody, gave everybody the same opportunity to comment, and it was a DDA decision, and it took them 2 meetings to make that decision.
Well, and I think the important thing is that he did get it right, that it was awarded to the most competitive and the
Yes.
most qualified.
Yes.
Even though it was the highest.
Was
No,
it the
they
highest?
weren't the highest. The 3 companies that were there, that were interviewed, not the other 2, but the 3 that were interviewed were Northwest Sign Design, which was Mr. Harji. He got a $339,598, or $639,598. Creative Sign Designs from Kelly Crandall came in at $1,058,000. And IMG Craig Johnson came in at $968,742. And to go to Butch's point, after all of the interviews and the conversations, it would be very fair to say that it wasn't the DDA's almost unanimous decision that they didn't feel that Mr. Harji's firm, NW Sign Industries, was the most qualified firm to do the bid, even given the price difference. He was missing significant small details related to Gwinnett County's rules and regulations of posting it, which would change the cost, and indicated to the DDA that there would probably be change orders that would have to be made almost immediately after the bid was awarded.
So I think I asked you about this a couple weeks ago. Has that been explained to Mr. Hartree? Because I still am getting constant contact from him, and I thought, the reason I put this on there is because I thought this was taken care of a couple weeks ago with Dad, when I spoke to you last.
We'll be glad to. I mean, like I said, I've talked to him a couple of times. I know nobody likes to lose a bid. And this process has taken a lot longer than, I mean, the discussion is lasted for a year and a half. So I will be glad to talk to him again, and we'll share everything that we can with him. I don't know that we can satisfy him, but we'll certainly try.
Anybody else have any other
Are there
questions?
specific points that you felt disqualified him that you could explain to him? Or have you done that already?
I mean, maybe Buddy can speak to that better, but there were a lot of issues. One thing, we're talking about New Jersey, Florida, and Norcross. When you look at the differences in what the chosen firm has done, we'll be glad to talk with him.
The easiest answer is, Dave, that after they did the interviews, there really was not a sense that he would be able to accomplish what he had proposed.
For the price.
May I say a word?
Sure.
Number one is, this is a DDA project, it wasn't an elected official's project. So he was inaccurate in that regard. When we actually looked at the 3 vendors, we spent time with, it was pretty obvious by the unanimous set of DDA directors that the lowest bidder was so low and out of state that this being a multi-decade project, and that when I say multi-decade, these things are going to be up 20, 30, 40 years. And to have a support company out of Florida who actually has a very low bid, we felt that the ability for them to want to either support us or what they're going to charge us to support us didn't make sense for us. That it was actually, the Norcross company wasn't the highest bidder at all. He wasn't the highest bidder, he was local, and he actually had all the regulations right.
Discussion of recent city attorney bills, Ms. Bender.
We had received, the city attorney bill dated August 31st for $32,410, which covered the services through July. And, you know, of course, I knew that at least the first bill was gonna be quite high with all of the issues needing to be addressed. But I had several concerns on this. One being, is probably to you, Mayor. Previous city attorneys, we had negotiated a flat price for coming out to council meetings. And apparently, I guess that was not done on here. The introductory meeting where, Balch and Bingham brought all three attorneys out to meet with us. We've been charged $2,710 for that meeting. July 13th, the regular meeting charges totaled $3,115. I believe we were paying $300 per meeting. The July 27th regular meeting, we were charged $1,150. So I was just wondering if you had addressed with the city attorneys any kind of flat fee pricing for the city council meetings.
When you guys all had the opportunity to meet with Chris, you guys reviewed his representation agreement, and it was for an hourly rate. I do believe we talked about the associates wouldn't be billing at the same time as Chris, but I think you received an email from him Friday if you had questions, or Bill to send those to him directly, and he'll be happy to look at it. So I would suggest if you do have questions, you send those to him.
Okay,
And
so
He'll give us a credit for those. But
my question was, did you negotiate a flat price?
We agreed to the hourly rate, which this council was aware of before he started working.
You know, I guess my other concerns are, of course, we have, the cop cab research, which had all really been done and resolved before. I think, Chris had emailed Bobby, because Bobby had requested, detail on those fees, and that he would pay that out of cop cab donated funds. That totaled, I think the email said $1,800. So that's a lot of fees for a nonprofit to absorb, so I would ask if your firm can, if there's any relief that could be granted on some of that bill.
I'll pass it up. I don't have the authority to decide that, but I'll pass it on to Chris.
Okay. And then, you know, we've got a lot of billing here too. I just wanted to mention that, you know, the attorney fee issue that we're dealing with and been dealing with, the majority of council had already designated an attorney, and yet in this bill, we've got another $6,275 of research, review, and new opinions.
I think the majority of council, though illegally designated an attorney, and that attorney doesn't have the authority to be paid by the city of Snellville, yet this council has illegally given that attorney $30,000 for an appeal that he doesn't have the authority to do. So if you want to go there, I'm more than happy to, Ms. Bender, but this
Okay,
is the
so-
lawful attorney in that case. He's the only attorney that the city of Snellville is authorized to pay. If council wants to have their own individual attorney like you did with Mr. Talent, then the council is responsible for paying that individual attorney. Unfortunately, this council, the majority of it, used taxpayer money to pay that attorney, which was not permitted.
And the billings in this bill for that were $6,275. There are fees and things regarding the election, which is what I was expecting to see. I guess I'm just a little concerned, right, and then maybe I can address this to Chris as well, that maybe if you could relay this to Chris, that one of the things that we discussed in the initial meeting was that the biggest focus for Balch and Bingham needed to be getting us through in the election, and making sure that everything was being handled properly so that we have a valid election take place. And I just want to make sure that we've got that right focus, because I know you guys have been addressing a lot of issues and a lot of things have been thrown at you. But I just wanna make sure we're on track, with everything.
On the election questions, you mean? Yeah,
uh-huh.
yeah, it is my understanding, and Chris has handled most of those directly, but it's my understanding that we've addressed every issue that's been raised, unless there's something that we don't know about, which is hard to know, but we've addressed all those issues. I understand that was a priority and treated it that way.
Okay,
I mean, the other issues are, questions that came from the mayor or individual council members that we've been handling, but that doesn't mean we have been neglecting the election question.
right. And then has anybody, in the firm been just doing a general oversight just to make sure that the city was hitting all their key dates and everything, or they've only been on a reactive, state on that?
I mean, I'm a little reluctant to delve into it only because Chris has been answering most of the questions. But what I recall seeing is sort of these are the deadlines that need to be met, this is what needs to be done, and we've gotten confirmation that all of that stuff has been done.
Okay,
So I don't know that he has been calling to, every day to check in, but I think that the calendar of things that need to happen and the requirements have been communicated, and it's been communicated to us that all of those things are being accomplished in a timely manner.
okay. And then just a couple of other, questions that I had. There's some, and I don't know if this was just something separate in the entry, but there's some, different correspondence to an N. Majid. Does anyone know who that is?
She's an associate in our office that's done a lot of research to answer specific questions,
Oh, okay.
including the election stuff.
Okay, so that's. There was an entry on July 28th that said, work on research concerning employment issues regarding hiring a city attorney. Is that all about hiring Kevin Fallon, do you know?
I don't know, that's not, that's Chris's entry, so I can't
Okay,
say.
I'll ask Chris then. And then there was another entry, again, this is Chris's entry, I may need to ask him about review and analyze trademark issues. Do you have any idea what that was pertaining to?
Not specifically, no.
I think it probably was election related also.
I was gonna say, I think I remember seeing emails about websites or something, but Chris answered those questions, so I
Okay,
can't say
Yeah,
specifically.
there was
what he
just a
did.
question about the trademark slogan, when it could be used.
okay, so we paid $600 for that. And then there was a drafting a cease and desist letter to research current cases on political speech. Was that all related to the same thing?
I don't know anything about that question.
Okay. And that was PPS is the entry? You know, should I just ask Chris that question as well?
Yeah, what you can see on the first page of the bills, all of the attorneys that have entries are on the first page.
Okay, Pam has to- And then, I saw Chris's email about, the firm's resignation and that you'll stay on until the end of October. But is
That's my
that,
understanding.
is that gonna be through the election?
He'll be staying, I spoke to Chris, originally when I hired him, the hiring was through the election, and so he'll be staying until whoever the mayor is decides who the city attorney will be.
Okay.
They all took a considerable reduction in their fees when they came to take this job. And so when I first approached them, it was with the understanding that they would only stay here until November.
Okay.
Then do we know why that understanding went sideways and we wanted to quit immediately?
Well, Mr. Howard, I believe after his conversations with you and your unprofessional remarks towards him, he had some issues with staying on at all. But he has agreed.
So it's my
He
fault.
has agreed
That's what
to
you're saying.
stay on as we agreed originally through November.
So you're saying it's my fault. The email I got didn't reference any of that. So you're just gonna blame me. Is that how we're gonna play it?
Mr.
Is that yes or no?
Mr. Howard, we're moving on. Ms. Bender, do you have any other questions about the bill?
That is all my questions.
Thank you. Anybody else? D, discussion of 1927 Fabersham Drive. I don't know if everybody else did, but I received a copy of a petition from several homeowners. They put their addresses but not contact information, their phone number or email. So I put it on today's agenda. They're complaining about the condition of 1927 Fabersham Drive. I don't know if complaining is a nuisance. Have we had any reports out there?
Let me just give you a little history on that property. Basically, it was a house, that burned down several years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years, I'm not sure of the exact date. And the lot owners did mow it for a good bit of time, maybe a year or two. And at that point in time, after that, they decided to let it basically reforest itself. As far as code enforcement options, we don't have any because the requirement for grass and weeds is strictly for something that has a habitable space or structure. And I've provided those definitions for you here. So at that point in time, we've had some calls come in probably every 8 or 12 months, worried about the lot, and we told them there's really nothing we can do unless there's an ordinance. Or now we have this ability, or they do, to file what's called a private nuisance is what we think they should file, but that process I also handed out, and that involves the people that are being specifically harmed by said nuisance, initiating proceedings with the city clerk, the mayor and council, then having a hearing with the affected property owners and the property owner themselves, and then at that point, mayor and council can make a decision and order abatement, which is supposed to be carried out by the police chief and any member of the police force.
Jason, do we know is there an HOA in that subdivision?
No, it's an older subdivision, and we have this happen on subdivisions where there's lots that aren't developed. I think the concept behind it is that you want the lot to kind of reforest itself so that it establishes soil and erosion control. Once the trees come up, the weeds will die out, and that's why that exception is in the ordinance. And there's a lot of probably undeveloped lots without homes on them in Snellville, probably hundreds.
Is there, is the lot completely vacant though, or is there still debris from the
Nothing
old
there.
house?
It's half a driveway and just pretty thick, dense, I would say, weeds and some pine trees coming in, and just typical what's gonna happen in a couple of years without getting it chopped down. It's a little over half an acre, 25 acres.
Did the planning department, did y'all receive a copy of the petition?
I've got one, yes.
Is it possible that maybe somebody from code enforcement or someone could go out and speak to maybe one of the neighbors and explain to them the
Yeah,
private nuisance process?
I've spoken probably with most of these people at some point in time and explained the issues that we have with actually abating it. I can explain them this process if they're willing to get into it and file it.
Does it
Yeah.
cost money, does the filing cost money, is there a
Not from
fee?
what I can tell, we've never had a publicly, nuisance before applied like this. We've done the buildings abatements, but it's not the same, so it seems pretty loose, and as long as you follow these 4 steps, you could issue an order to be handed down by the police department, and then I guess tickets after that, or subject to arrest, is basically what it comes down to. So the only thing I caution is that once you take that step on one lot, you're opening yourself up for every other one in the city.
But it's, I think the impression I got from the neighborhood was that they feel they have no option, so at least it's an option to present to them. I don't know what other options we may have other than to.
I've spoken to a couple of property owners there. Their concern is snakes, rats, and mice. So I don't know what's your choice. I think if somebody goes in and just mows the grass, even if it's mowed high, encourages the undesirables to leave, I think they'd be happy with that. I don't think we want to have people getting snake bit and then have somebody come back and say, well, the city had it.
But if we mow that, I mean, I've got 2 vacant lots next to me. I mean, you start mowing the grass, then where do we draw that line?
That's a good question.
Well, if you require them to come in and clear out the trees, then it never reforests.
No, I don't think that's a problem, it's all the
Just that
undergrowth that gives places to hide for snakes. So I think that's the consideration, and I don't know what the right answer is, but
Yeah.
that's their concern.
Well, according to the ordinance, we don't have those powers, so it would have to be vested.
Have to be a
in the
nuisance, yeah.
Correct.
And if it's a nuisance, does that fall back to the property owner?
Yeah, the property owner, basically, you would conduct a quasi hearing within the mayor and council, public hearing, and have him present his argument, and then the neighbors present their argument, and then we basically would make a ruling by vote in almost a quasi judicial fashion.
And it's the same as the properties in government, if it's declared a nuisance, then we have the authority to go in there and do repairs or mow the grass and then place a lien on the property.
Well, it doesn't go that far. I mean, it says we can order the abatement. No, it just says demand that the nuisance be abated to the property owner. And, at that point, that's when it talks about they can get charged with violating state law and be arrested. In the event of a refusal to comply with the order of abatement issued by the mayor, the person or persons maintaining the nuisance shall be subject to arrest in violation of state law.
That's better than a lien, it's more motivating.
So I guess the question tonight is, does the council want to take any action on this, or do we want to leave it to code enforcement just to explain their options to the
I'm more than happy, we've done it several times, we'll call I think the first lady is the one that's kind of, the lady right next door is the one that's been the most affected. Some of these people don't even live on the street in Driftwood, I guess they're on the other side.
Well, maybe you could get a group of them together, 3 or 4 people, and explain the process and see if they wanna do from there.
It's not a problem.
Get as many of them together as you can, get her to bring as many together as you
I
can.
was just out there late this afternoon, I think we need to look at the ordinance, because it leaves too many gaps there. It's not good for the neighbors, not good for the staff.
So we can, maybe y'all put your heads together and decide what we need to do with them.
We just need to address it with them, they need to know something's going on.
Okay.
You're gonna set up a meeting with the homeowners. In the meantime, Jason, can you email maybe that ordinance over to Ms. Johnson? And if we need to put it on our next work session, if we need to make any amendments to it or anything.
It's really just a policy decision on how you wanna handle vacant lots. And that's kind of the thing. It's not one to be made lightly either, because there's a lot of them out there, commercial and residential, so it needs to be pretty strict.
We don't need exec session tonight?